Greetings Acolytes, Evrengost here. Today I'm breaking down the character sheet in the alpha version of Dark Heresy, Owlcat Games' upcoming Warhammer 40k CRPG. Even though this is an alpha, the core structure of the sheet is unlikely to change, so learning how to read it now is a skill that will carry forward into the full release. While I obviously cannot fully complete a playtest version of the game, this guide is aimed at beginners and is based on multiple playthroughs of the available content. My goal is to ease you in. Warhammer is a long-running franchise, and CRPG systems can be daunting at first. I'll avoid number crunching, since it makes little sense at this stage of development, and focus instead on how the systems actually work. Dark Heresy shares some similarities with Rogue Trader, but it also introduces important differences, which I'll explain as clearly as I can. I am not assuming prior experience with Owlcat's previous games, since Dark Heresy is not narratively connected to Rogue Trader. Some of you may also be coming from the original 2008 tabletop RPG published by Black Industries. If you've seen my previous guides or analysis, you know that I aim to be thorough while keeping things simple, clear, and easy to follow. I'm going to add chapters so you can jump directly to the parts that are most relevant or confusing for you. Without further ado, let's dive in. The first thing to do is a little weird, because I suggest starting to understand the character sheet from the inventory screen and not the character one. It contains almost all the essential information we need, grouped and presented in what I believe to be a clearer way. The real character sheet is a little dry, so this may change in the future. In the inventory screen, at the top left, we have the character name. I'm going to mention this only because in the alpha we issued a placeholder character to play for test purposes, named Acolyte, and this might generate some confusion. Acolyte is not the character class or our rank inside the Inquisition, it's simply this placeholder character's name. Right below the name, we have 3 tabs, and the game automatically shows us the middle one called Profile. This is fine, as it already contains a lot of useful information. If you come from D&D or other D20 based systems, all of this may seem a little confusing. The key here is to understand that Dark Heresy uses a D100 system, meaning that most checks are resolved by rolling a D100 and the test is passed if you roll under your relevant characteristic or skill value. There are no fixed difficulty classes to meet or surpass. For example, if we're shooting a rifle at an enemy, we're going to make a ballistic skill check. A lot of modifiers to the roll will be applied, such as distance, cover, weapon properties, enemy defense, character abilities that have been activated, and so on. If your roll, after applying all those modifiers, both positive and negative, is below your ballistic skill, the attack lands. The game does all the calculations for you, which is great, but it's useful to understand what influences them. Considering a real situation that happens in-game, if an enemy is behind cover and difficult to hit with rifle shots, we may opt to switch to a flamer instead, since its attacks ignore cover. By understanding how cover works, which is by applying a substantial malus to our ballistic skill check, we can make an informed decision and use the flamer to our advantage. Now, I've said there are no difficulty classes like in D&D, such as make an athletics check with a DC of 15, but tests can still be easier or harder to pass. The difficulty of a test is given by a modifier. For example, applying a -10 to your roll if it's easy, or a +20 if it's hard. Removing debris to clear a passage may require an athletics check with a +20 modifier because heavy junk is clogging it. You roll the D100, add 20, and you succeed if the result is lower than your athletic skill value. In the Dark Heresy video game, as well as in Rogue Trader, the game doesn't show the difficulty of a test. Instead, you'll see a percentage indicating your chance of success, assuming the best party member for the job will make the roll, and the game automatically uses the best party member when your entire party is selected. You don't have to manually pick the best character for the task at hand. You may ask yourself how you're supposed to pass a check if your stats are so low, and that's where specializing different party members in different skills becomes a good strategy. You can also tweak skill test modifiers in the difficulty options if you want to play on a modular custom difficulty. In Rogue Trader, our stats can even reach values around 200 once party members have enough levels under their belt, especially with DLC content installed. While Dark Heresy will likely have a lower power level overall, it's still very possible that at higher character levels these values will become quite high. Now that we know how the D100 system works, let's take a look at those values, starting with the characteristics. Weapon skill and ballistic skill indicate the character's ability to fight with melee and ranged weapons, respectively. If you're stabbing someone with a knife, you roll weapon skill. If you're shooting with a sniper rifle, you roll ballistic skill. Pretty straightforward. Strength, besides influencing its related skills, adds its ability bonus to melee damage. Ability bonus is an important concept. It's obtained by considering only the 10th digit of the relevant characteristic value. For instance, since Cog has a strength value of 65, his strength bonus is 6, and that makes him a powerful melee character. The exact formulas may change and are not worth memorizing right now, but the important takeaway is that melee damage scales with strength. Toughness represents a character's resilience, and your wounds, meaning your hit points, scale with the toughness bonus. Agility represents how fast your character is. Your movement points and defense scale with the agility bonus. Intelligence is self-explanatory and influences vital damage. Vital damage is a special type of damage that can be inflicted on enemies and also inflicted on you, which carries special penalties in the form of critical conditions. This damage scales with the intelligence bonus. Perception also influences vital damage, adding its bonus to the damage inflicted. Willpower is the character's mental resilience, and essentially works as a saving throw against torture, the powers of the warp, and similar effects. Fellowship represents charisma, and is important for dialogue checks and for classes whose abilities scale with it. An example is the Officer archetype, a support class based on Fellowship and battlefield morale manipulation. While in Rogue Trader officers are very powerful because they throw extra turns around, in Dark Heresy they're still very powerful because they control the flow of combat morale. Since character creation is not available yet, an educated guess is that at level 1 these characteristics start at around 30, with modifiers from background choices. For example, in this alpha version, Cog has a -10 to intelligence and willpower due to being an Ogryn bonehead, a background that also grants a +15 to strength and toughness. I know I said I wouldn't do number crunching. This is just to introduce the idea that the character's background will most likely influence their starting stats. Before jumping to skills, let's take a look at the other stats shown on this screen. Around the character portrait we find the level, wounds, armor, and defense. Level is self-explanatory. You can check exact experience point numbers if you want, but I don't find it particularly important. The circular progress indicator is more than enough for having a general idea of how close we are to the next level. Wounds are your character's hit points. They start from a base value and are influenced by toughness, talents, and items. They automatically replenish after combat. If they reach 0, the character falls unconscious, gains critical effects that persist after combat, and needs healing through medikits. Armor and defense, instead, are new parameters introduced in Dark Heresy. Rogue Trader used deflection, armor, dodge, and parry, all contributing to mitigating or avoiding damage. Most of them have been merged into these new stats, simplifying the system while adding a new tactical layer. Armor now acts as an additional health bar, shown as a silver bar above the regular health bar when in combat. You must deplete it before damaging the real unit's health. Armor has its own durability, which depends entirely on the equipped gear. It's similar to the Divinity Original Sin 2 armor system. Heavy armor also provides damage reduction. As long as armor is intact, you're protected from vital damage and critical effects. This new armor system has it replenished automatically after combat, but some weapons deal increased damage to it, such as meltaguns, while others bypass it entirely, like knives, directly damaging health. And this is the new tactical layer I mentioned earlier. Depending on your enemies, you'll need to adapt your approach. For example, enemies armed with lace guns, which deal extra damage to armor, can quickly melt down your frontline tank if you're not careful. Defense instead depends on agility and makes you harder to hit. I'm not entirely sure how it factors into attack calculations, since the codex or encyclopedia are not available in the alpha. Moving on, below these stats we have 4 icons summarizing active effects. The first, a cross, indicates negative effects applied when morale is broken, especially after using desperate measures, since they give you maluses until the end of combat. I haven't interacted with it much, since those effects drop, but it can be useful as a reminder during fights, I guess. The second icon, resembling a broken bone, lists negative effects and conditions, such as the one coming from vital damage. The third, a blood drop, appears to relate to bleeding effects. Finally, the last one, a blue arrow, lists positive effects and buffs. Influence is another new stat, indicating the radius around the character within which certain abilities affect other units on the battlefield. That's a mouthful, so let's make it clear with an example. The soldier ability Revel in Slaughter increases ranged damage against enemies within the user's influence radius. Influence is usually 2, so Haymar can increase his damage to enemies in a radius of 2 cells around him, provided we chose to buy Revel in Slaughter leveling up. Action points and movement points are exactly what you expect. Action points are spent on attacks and abilities during your turn, while movement points determine how many cells a character can move. Finally, on the left, we see the two archetypes we'll eventually pick in the full game. The alpha only shows some tier 1 archetypes. In the final version, I'm pretty sure we'll also choose a tier 2 archetype, just like in Rogue Trader. Since character creation isn't available yet, for now we only see the archetypes of the placeholder character and companions. The ones currently available are the officer, the soldier, the warrior, the operative, the mystic, which is the tier 1 psyker archetype, and the wayseeker, a special archetype for the Eldari companion. Now, let's move to the skill tab. Skills are sorted by the characteristic that governs them, similar to a spreadsheet. As we can see, weapon skill and ballistic skill don't have associated skills, while strength governs athletics and tenacity. A skill's base value equals the related characteristic value plus any bonuses from archetypes, specializations, or items. Worth noting is that not every character has the same skill layout. For example, Epion, due to her Chirurgeon background, uses intelligence instead of fellowship for the Medicae skill. This adds Medicae under intelligence, which currently messes up the table layout in both the inventory and character tabs. I'm sure this will be cleaned up later, as it can be quite confusing. I feel this part of the character sheet is likely the most subject to change. Skills might be added, removed, or modified during development, especially since some are barely used, at least for now, while others come up constantly. So I invite you to treat this just as a general overview. If you come from Rogue Trader, you'll notice immediately that there are more skills here. This likely reflects the investigative focus of Dark Heresy and its closer ties to the TTRPG. Skills marked with a bolter icon are probably the ones we can advance based on background and archetype, but this is not explained yet, so consider it an educated guess. Some skill return from Rogue Trader, others are obvious, and some are new and focused on investigation. Let's go through them quickly. Athletics returns and governs physically demanding tasks like opening manholes, clearing debris, and lifting heavy objects. Tenacity functions like a saving throw, helping overcome physical restraints and debilitating conditions. Resistance is another saving throw based on toughness, used to resist poison and crippling critical effects. These are common in tough fights when your armor starts being depleted. Demolition returns from Rogue Trader and is used for explosives and mechanical trap disarming. Mobility represents dexterity and balance, and is used for environmental interactions like crossing gaps with cables. Reflexes is another saving throw style skill, helping avoid sudden threats and bleeding. Sleight of Hand is used for lockpicking and pickpocketing, granting access to more loot. There is even an instance in this alpha where you can steal keys from an NPC to open an otherwise inaccessible door. The lore skills represent knowledge of specific subjects. Lore Imperium has been replaced with Lore Heresy, which fits the actual game. Lore Xenos covers alien species, while Lore Warp deals with warp phenomena, demons, and psychic powers. Tech use returns and governs hacking and technological interactions. It's no longer used for saves unless they're computerized. In the alpha, it also has an investigative role for accessing locked information. Awareness helps avoid ambushes, spot hidden objects, and notice investigative clues in the environment. Wits is a new skill representing common sense and information processing. It comes up often and feels essential for investigators. Interrogation is another new skill closely tied to Dark Heresy, used for extracting information through, let's say, various methods. Meddle is another saving throw type skill used to resist hostile mental effects. I imagine especially useful against enemy psychers. Intimidation and diplomacy are pretty obvious dialogue skills, often offering opposing solutions. These choices can affect faction reputation, so they're worth considering carefully. Finally, Medicae returns as the healing skill, improving medikit effectiveness. It's also used for medical analysis of clues, such as determining cause of death. Some abilities scale with it, like Epion's Chirurgeon features. As a last side note for the inventory screen, the Offence tab provides a summary of weapon characteristics for the currently equipped weapon sets. It shows whether attacks use weapon or ballistic skill, available attack types, base hit chances before battlefield and enemy modifiers, and damage values. Switching to the characteristic tab at the top shows similar information to the inventory screen, but with an added column listing active effects and conditions. This is useful if you notice drain characteristics and want to know why. The Convictions tab is not implemented yet. The Archetypes tab shows the character build. The background section has 4 slots, but currently only 2 are used. One shows the origin, such as Imperium Noble, and another shows the Tier 1 archetype, like Officer. One empty slot will likely be used for the Tier 2 archetype later, while the fourth is still unclear. Possibly this will be a homeworld choice, similar to Rogue Trader. The Specialization section lists our archetype specializations. Archetypes grant abilities, and now include specializations, grouping talents and modifications more clearly than in Rogue Trader. These specializations differ by archetype, and we can currently see choices at levels 3, 6, 14, and 19. This may well change for balance. For instance, for officers, this means specializing into combat morale, attack buffs or debuffs, enemy demoralization, or medium armor. Each specialization grants a bonus plus immediate characteristic and skill modifiers, while listed talents and modifications become available to buy at later level ups. Now, trying to be clear here, abilities are active skills used in combat, and they come from your archetypes, while talents and modifications come from specializations. Talents are passive bonuses or ability alterations, while modifications are slotted into abilities to change how they behave. In this same Archetypes tab, we can see all talents grouped by source, such as origin or archetype, and I think the UI does a good job at making it very clear. Finally, the Abilities tab lists all available abilities by category, shows the hotbar, and allows you to slot both abilities and modifications in their respective places. This pretty much sums up everything I can explain about the Dark Heresy character sheet in its alpha version. Many things can still change, and some systems are missing, but the core structure is unlikely to shift drastically, and that's why I chose to do this video, even if it's early in the development process. If you want to try the alpha version yourself, it's available to backers who buy the Developer Digital Pack or the Collector's Edition. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. Remember to activate the purity seals below to help the channel grow, especially the like and subscribe ones. More Dark Heresy videos are coming. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.